The morning started like any other on the peaceful world of Altara Prime. Captain Zara Veltan stood at the tall windows of the Federation Council building, watching the gentle sunrise paint the sky in soft colors. The twin moons were setting behind the crystal mountains, and the air smelled of blooming flowers that grew wild across the entire planet. Zara had served as the chief diplomat for the Altarian Federation for over 30 years. In all that time, she had never dealt with anything more serious than trade disputes or minor border disagreements. The Altarians were a peaceful people who had not seen war for over 2,000 years. Their technology was advanced. Their cities were beautiful, and their people lived long, happy lives. The communication device on her desk began to flash with urgent red lights. Zara frowned as she walked over to answer it. Emergency signals were rare in their society. The last time she remembered seeing one was when a solar storm had threatened their weather control satellites 5 years ago. "Captain Veltan speaking," she said into the device. The voice that came back was filled with panic. It belonged to Commander Thrix Paul Van from the outer colony of Epsilon 7. "Captain, we need immediate help. They came out of nowhere. Our automated defenses are failing. We have maybe 6 hours before the colony falls." Zara felt her blood turn cold. "Who came? What are you talking about?" "Unknown ships, Captain. They look like they are made of living tissue. They ignore our attempts to communicate. They just attack everything in sight. We managed to destroy one of their smaller vessels, but it regenerated its damaged parts in minutes. Our energy weapons barely scratched them." Before Zara could respond, the transmission filled with static. Through the noise, she could hear explosions and screaming. Then the signal went dead. Zara immediately contacted the other outer colonies. One by one, she received similar reports. Colony ships that looked like giant insects. Weapons that grew back after being destroyed. Entire settlements being consumed by some kind of biological horror. Within 2 hours, the Altarian High Council had gathered in emergency session. The council chamber was a beautiful dome of crystal and gold, designed to inspire peace and calm discussion. Today, it felt more like a tomb. Elder Korvash Velthun, the oldest member of the council, spoke first. His voice trembled with age and fear. "In my 400 years of life, I have never heard of anything like this. These creatures, these Korthak as they call themselves, they do not want our resources or our territory. They seem to want to destroy us simply because we exist. Have we tried offering them technology?" asked Counselor Prim Velnash, a younger member who still believed all conflicts could be solved through negotiation. "Perhaps they are desperate for something we can provide." Zara shook her head. "We tried everything. We offered them our most advanced medical technology, our food production systems, even our star maps. They responded by sending more ships. The only communication we received was a simple message: 'You will be consumed.'" The council fell silent. For a people who had solved every problem through peaceful means, the concept of an enemy that could not be reasoned with was almost impossible to understand. "What about our defense fleet?" asked Elder Velthun. Admiral Corax Vel Quinn, the head of their small space force, looked uncomfortable. "Our ships were designed for exploration and rescue operations. We have defensive shields and some light weapons, but nothing that can stand against these bioships. We lost 3 vessels in the first engagement. The creatures seemed to learn from each attack, adapting their tactics in real time." "How many colonies have we lost?" Zara asked, though she feared the answer. 7 confirmed destroyed. 3 more under attack. We estimate we have less than 2 weeks before they reach our core systems." The chamber erupted in worried voices. Some counselors suggested evacuating the entire Federation. Others wanted to surrender and hoped the creatures would show mercy. A few talked about building new weapons, though none of them had any experience with warfare. Elder Velthun raised his hand for silence. "There is one option we have not discussed. The Galactic Communication Network has records of other civilizations. Perhaps one of them could help us." "Who would want to help us?" asked Counselor Velnash. "We are a small federation. We have little to offer in trade for military assistance." Zara had been thinking about this problem since the first attack. There are species in the galaxy that other civilizations fear. The records speak of worlds so dangerous that most ships avoid them entirely. Worlds where the dominant species evolved through constant warfare and struggle. You mean the Deathworlds, Admiral Velquin said quietly. I have read about them in the old exploration reports. Planets with extreme weather, deadly creatures, and inhabitants that are considered too aggressive for normal diplomatic contact. Exactly, Zara said. If we are facing an enemy that cannot be negotiated with, perhaps we need allies who understand violence. The council debated for hours. Many members were horrified at the idea of contacting beings from Deathworlds. The Altarians had built their entire civilization on the idea that intelligence and peaceful cooperation could solve any problem. Asking for help from violent species felt like admitting their entire way of life was wrong. In the end, desperation won. With their colonies falling one by one and no other options available, the council voted to send out a distress signal to any civilization capable of military action. Zara worked with their best communication specialists to craft the message. It needed to explain their situation without making them sound weak or helpless. It needed to offer something in return for military aid. Most importantly, it needed to reach someone willing and able to fight the Korthak. The message was broadcast on all frequencies across the galaxy. It described the Altarian Federation, their peaceful nature, and the threat they faced. It offered their advanced medical technology, their knowledge of stellar engineering, and safe passage through their space in return for military assistance. Most civilizations who received the message either ignored it or sent polite refusals. A few offered to accept Altarian refugees, but none were willing to fight an unknown enemy. The message reached Earth 3 days after it was sent. Earth was listed in most galactic databases as a Class 12 death world, meaning it was considered extremely dangerous and largely avoided by other species. The dominant species, called humans, were noted as being unusually aggressive and adaptable. Admiral Kate Morrison was working late in her office at Terran Defense Command when the communication came through. She had been reviewing reports about increased pirate activity near the outer colonies when her aide, Lieutenant Carl Beck, brought her the alien transmission. Admiral, we just received this message from somewhere called the Altarian Federation. They are asking for military help against something called the Korthak Swarm. Kate read through the translated message twice. The description of the enemy was disturbing. Ships that could regenerate damage, biological weapons, and a complete lack of interest in negotiation painted a picture of a truly dangerous foe. What do we know about these Altarians? She asked. Very little, ma'am. They appear to be a peaceful federation of about 12 star systems. No military conflicts in their recorded history. They specialize in medical technology and stellar engineering. Kate studied the star charts showing the location of the Altarian Federation. It was not close to Earth, but it was not impossibly far either. More importantly, the expansion pattern of this Korthak swarm suggested they were moving toward the area of space that contained several human colonies. Get me a meeting with the Joint Chiefs, Kate ordered. If this Korthak swarm is as dangerous as it sounds, they could become our problem eventually. It might be better to deal with them now, while we have potential allies, than wait for them to reach our space. As Lieutenant Beck left to arrange the meeting, Kate looked out at the Earth, hanging in space beyond her orbital station. Humanity had spread to dozens of worlds, but Earth remained their home. It was a world that had forged them through ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and countless wars. If there were creatures in the galaxy that needed to be stopped, humans were probably the right species for the job. The message from the Altarian Federation had been answered. Earth was preparing to deploy its Deathworlders. The emergency meeting at Terran Defense Command lasted 12 hours. Admiral Kate Morrison sat at the head of the long table, surrounded by the highest-ranking military officers in human space. General Lucas Hayes, a veteran of 3 colonial wars, studied the data about the Korthak swarm with growing concern. These biological ships trouble me, General Hayes said, pointing at the images the Altarians had sent. Our standard kinetic weapons might not be effective against something that can heal itself. Actually, sir, they might be more effective than energy weapons, said Dr. Helen Park, Earth's leading expert on hostile alien life forms. She had been called in specifically for this meeting. Energy weapons give these creatures time to adapt. A kinetic round moving at high speed does not give biological tissue time to respond. Admiral Morrison nodded. What about their numbers? The report suggests they have hundreds of ships. Colonel Jake Mitchell, commander of the 1st Expeditionary Force, spoke up. We have been tracking their movement pattern. They attack in waves, consuming everything before moving to the next target. This suggests they need time to process their victims before continuing. If we can disrupt their feeding cycle, we might slow their advance. The debate continued for hours. Some officers worried about committing Earth's military to a fight so far from home. Others pointed out that the Korthak expansion path would eventually reach human colonies. Captain Bill Turner argued that helping the Altarians now might prevent a larger conflict later. There is another consideration, said Dr. Park. The Altarians have offered us their medical technology in exchange for help. Their research could save millions of human lives. General Hayes leaned back in his chair. What kind of force would we need to send? Colonel Mitchell had prepared for this question. I recommend the full 1st Expeditionary Force, 12 ships including 3 heavy cruisers, about 8,000 personnel total. We would need to move fast to reach them before their core worlds fall. What about command structure? Asked Admiral Morrison. We would be fighting alongside aliens we have never met. I suggest joint operations, replied Colonel Mitchell. We provide the military expertise. They provide local knowledge and technical support. Our people are trained for multi-species operations. The meeting ended with a unanimous vote to deploy. Earth would send its military to help a species they had never met fight an enemy they did not understand. It was exactly the kind of decision that had made humanity successful throughout their expansion into space. Within 6 hours, the 1st Expeditionary Force was preparing for departure. The main fleet gathered at Luna Station, humanity's largest military base. Colonel Mitchell stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser UTS Defiance, watching his ships form up for the journey to Altarian space. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Chen reported from her station. All ships ready for departure, sir. Engineering reports all systems green. Excellent. Signal the fleet to prepare for jump. The crew of the Defiance represented the best of human military training. They came from every continent on Earth and from colonies across human space. Each had been selected for their ability to adapt to extreme situations and work with alien species. Sergeant Pete Rodriguez supervised the loading of the marine equipment. He had grown up in the Australian outback, where temperatures could kill an unprepared person in hours. His demolitions training had taken place in environments that most species would consider uninhabitable. To him, fighting unknown aliens in deep space was just another day at work. Corporal Amy Johnson checked her sniper rifle for the 3rd time. She had learned to shoot in the ruins of Detroit, where urban warfare had been a way of life for decades. Her ability to remain calm under pressure had been tested in conflicts across human space. The idea of fighting biological ships did not frighten her as much as it should have. Dr. Helen Park boarded the science vessel UTS Discovery with her research team. She had spent 20 years studying the most dangerous life forms on Earth and human colonies. Venomous creatures, parasitic organisms, and biological weapons held no mystery for her. She was actually excited to encounter a truly alien life form. The fleet consisted of ships designed for survival in the hostile environment of space. Human vessels were built thick and heavy, with multiple backup systems and armor that could withstand impacts from asteroids. They were not as elegant as some alien designs, but they were nearly impossible to destroy. The jump to Altarian space took 2 days. During the journey, Colonel Mitchell briefed his officers on what they knew about their new allies and enemies. The Altarians were described as tall, thin beings who had evolved on a world with low gravity and no natural predators. They were peaceful by nature and had advanced technology but no military experience. Remember, Colonel Mitchell told his staff, these people have never seen warfare. They may be shocked by our methods. We need to be respectful but firm. We are here to do a job, and we will do it our way. The Korthak were more mysterious. The few images available showed insect-like creatures with biological technology that seemed to grow rather than being manufactured. Their ships were described as living organisms that could repair damage and adapt to attacks. We do not know their psychology or their ultimate goals, Colonel Mitchell explained. All we know is they consume other species and show no interest in communication. Treat them as hostile until proven otherwise. When the human fleet arrived in Altarian space, they found the situation worse than expected. 2 more colonies had fallen while they were traveling, and Korthak scouts were probing the defenses of the core worlds. Captain Zara Veltan met them at the edge of Altarian territory aboard her diplomatic vessel. Her first sight of human beings was a shock. She had expected them to be similar to Altarians, perhaps slightly different in appearance. Instead, she found herself looking at creatures that seemed designed for violence. The humans were shorter than Altarians, but much more muscular. Their eyes faced forward like predators, and their movements suggested they were always ready for a fight. Even their diplomatic representatives wore what appeared to be body armor. Colonel Mitchell and his staff boarded the Altarian ship for the first joint meeting. The contrast between the 2 species was immediately obvious. The Altarian vessel was designed for comfort and beauty, with soft lighting and flowing curves. The humans looked out of place in the peaceful environment. Colonel Mitchell, Captain Veltan said, trying to hide her nervousness. Thank you for coming. We are desperate for your help. We are here to stop the Korthak, Mitchell replied simply. Tell us what you know about their capabilities and tactics. The briefing that followed was disturbing. The Korthak ships were not mechanical constructs but living creatures bred for war. They could regenerate damage, adapt to weapons, and coordinate their attacks through some kind of biological communication system. Traditional tactics had proven useless against them. We tried negotiating, Captain Veltan explained. We offered them everything we could think of. They responded by attacking more colonies. Some species cannot be negotiated with, said Colonel Mitchell. We will need to establish joint command protocols. Your people know the local area, but our people understand warfare. The next few hours were spent setting up the alliance. The Altarians were amazed by human military efficiency. Orders were given and followed without debate. Equipment was organized and deployed with mechanical precision. Plans were made for situations the Altarians had never imagined. Lieutenant Commander Chen was assigned to liaise with the Altarian fleet commanders. She quickly discovered that they had no concept of military hierarchy or chain of command. Decisions were made by committee, and orders were treated as suggestions. This will not work in combat, she explained to Colonel Mitchell. When Korthak ships attack, we need instant responses, not committee meetings. Then we adapt, Mitchell replied. Set up communication protocols so our people can coordinate with theirs. Make sure they understand that in battle, our orders are to be followed without question. Dr. Park began studying the biological samples the Altarians had recovered from destroyed Korthak vessels. What she found was both fascinating and terrifying. The Korthak were not just using biological technology, they were biological technology. Their ships were grown rather than built, and their weapons were living organs designed to kill. Colonel, she reported, these creatures are unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be a hybrid of insect and plant biology. Their regeneration abilities are remarkable, but I think I have found a weakness. What kind of weakness? They heal by redirecting biological resources from other parts of their structure. If we can damage them faster than they can heal, we might be able to overwhelm their regenerative abilities. As the joint fleet prepared for the first engagement with the Korthak, both species were learning about each other. The Altarians were shocked by human attitudes toward violence and death. The humans were puzzled by Altarian reluctance to take decisive action, but necessity was forcing them to work together. The Korthak fleet was approaching the Altarian core worlds, and time was running out. Earth's Deathworlders were about to face their greatest test. The first meeting between humans and Altarians in the same room was awkward. Captain Zara Veltan had arranged for Colonel Mitchell and his senior staff to visit the Altarian command center on their homeworld. The building was made of crystal and looked more like a work of art than a military facility. The Altarians who gathered to meet the humans were tall and graceful, with pale skin that seemed to glow in the soft light. Their movements were slow and careful, as if they were afraid of disturbing the peace around them. When they saw the humans enter the room, several of them stepped backward in obvious fear. Colonel Mitchell and his team looked like they had been built for war. Even in their dress uniforms, they moved with the controlled aggression of predators. Their eyes constantly scanned the room, looking for threats that did not exist. Their hands stayed near their weapons even in this peaceful setting. "Welcome to Altara Prime," Captain Veltan said, her voice shaking slightly. "We are honored by your presence." "Thank you for the invitation," Colonel Mitchell replied. "We need to understand your capabilities and limitations before we engage the enemy." The briefing that followed revealed just how different the two species were. The Altarians had never developed military tactics because they had never needed them. Their idea of conflict resolution was to talk until everyone agreed. Their ships were designed for exploration and rescue, not combat. "Our defensive systems are automated," explained Admiral Corax Velquin, the Altarian fleet commander. "We programmed them to disable attacking ships without causing permanent damage. We never imagined we would face an enemy that wanted to destroy us completely." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Chen asked, "What happens when your automated systems fail?" "We evacuate," Admiral Velquin replied simply. "We have never considered any other option." The humans exchanged glances. Dr. Helen Park leaned forward. "Have you ever studied predator behavior?" "Predators?" Captain Veltan looked confused. "We have no predators on our world. All our animals are herbivores. We eliminated carnivores from our ecosystem thousands of years ago." "That explains a lot," muttered Sergeant Pete Rodriguez. Colonel Mitchell took control of the meeting. "We need to establish some basic facts. First, the Korthak are predators. They hunt and consume other species. Second, they cannot be reasoned with because they see you as food, not as equals. Third, the only way to stop them is to kill them." Several Altarians looked sick at his words. The concept of deliberately killing another sentient being was almost impossible for them to understand. "Surely, there must be another way," pleaded Counselor Primvel Nash. "Perhaps if we offered them uninhabited worlds to consume." "They do not want empty worlds," Dr. Park explained. "Based on our analysis, they need living beings to process. They are biological machines designed to consume other life forms." The meeting continued for hours as the humans tried to explain warfare to beings who had never experienced it. The Altarians struggled to understand concepts like ambush tactics, acceptable losses, and the need for quick decisions in combat. Finally, Colonel Mitchell stood up. "We appreciate your peaceful nature, but we are running out of time. The Korthak will reach your core worlds in less than a week. We need to prepare your defenses now." The next few days were a crash course in military thinking for the Altarians. Human engineers worked with Altarian technicians to modify their ships for combat. The elegant exploration vessels were fitted with armor plating and weapon systems that looked crude compared to their original design. The Altarians were horrified by human weapons. While they used energy beams that could be precisely controlled, humans preferred kinetic weapons that fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. The humans explained that their weapons were designed to punch through armor and cause maximum damage to biological targets. "Your weapons are so violent," Captain Veltan observed while watching a demonstration. "Violence is sometimes necessary," replied Colonel Mitchell. "We learned that lesson long ago on our world." The cultural exchange went both ways. The humans were amazed by Altarian medical technology. Dr. Park spent hours studying their healing devices, which could repair injuries that would be fatal to humans. The Altarians had also mastered biotechnology, growing their equipment rather than manufacturing it. "Your regeneration technology is remarkable," Dr. Park told the Altarian scientists. "We could save thousands of lives with devices like these." "We developed them because we value all life," replied Dr. Keth Velmon, the chief Altarian medical researcher. "The idea of weapons designed to kill efficiently is disturbing to us." The first combat engagement came sooner than expected. Korthak, scout ships appeared at the edge of the star system, moving toward the inhabited worlds. The joint human-Altarian fleet moved to intercept them. Lieutenant Commander Chen commanded the destroyer UTS Defiance, with an Altarian observer aboard to coordinate with their forces. The Altarian, a young officer named Sub-Commander Vel Chris, had never seen combat before. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported the sensor officer. 3 Korthak vessels, medium size. Chen studied the enemy ships on her display. They looked like massive insects with wings spread wide. Their hulls seemed to pulse with organic life, and strange growths covered their surfaces. "They are beautiful in a terrible way," whispered Sub-Commander Velchris. "They are weapons," Chen replied. "Weapons designed to kill you, and everyone you know." The Korthak ships detected the human vessel and changed course to intercept. As they approached, they began transmitting on all frequencies. The message was simple and chilling. "You will be consumed." "Standard Korthak greeting," Chen said grimly. "All hands battle stations." The Defiance was designed for combat in the vacuum of space. Its hull was thick armor that could withstand meteor impacts. Its weapons were kinetic cannons that fired solid slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. The ship itself was a weapon, built by a species that understood the reality of violence. The first Korthak ship opened fire with biological weapons that sprayed acid and living organisms designed to eat through metal. The attack splashed harmlessly against the Defiance's armor, which had been designed to resist chemical and biological weapons. "Return fire," Chen ordered. The kinetic cannons spoke with thunder that shook the ship. Solid projectiles moving at incredible speed slammed into the Korthak vessel. The organic hull tried to absorb and redirect the impact, but the sheer kinetic energy was too much. Huge sections of the bioship were torn away. "Direct hit," reported the weapons officer. "The target is regenerating damage." Chen watched as the Korthak ship began to heal itself. New tissue grew to replace what had been destroyed, and the vessel continued its attack. But the regeneration was slower than the damage from the kinetic weapons. "Continuous fire," Chen ordered. "Do not give it time to heal." The Defiance poured fire into the Korthak ship. Each impact caused massive damage that the biological systems tried desperately to repair, but the human weapons were causing damage faster than the alien biology could heal. Sub-Commander Vel Chris watched in fascination and horror as the Korthak ship began to fall apart. "It is dying," he whispered. "It was never alive," Chen replied. "It was a weapon grown to kill your people." The first Korthak ship exploded in a burst of biological fluid and organic debris. The second ship tried to ram the Defiance, but Chen had expected this tactic. The human ship was built to survive collisions, and its armor absorbed the impact. The third Korthak vessel attempted to retreat, but Corporal Amy Johnson had set up her sniper position on a nearby asteroid. Her rifle was designed to penetrate ship armor at long range. A single shot from her weapon disabled the bioship's propulsion system. "Target disabled," Johnson reported. "Ready for boarding if required." "Negative," Chen replied. "Finish it." The battle was over in minutes. 3 Korthak scout ships had been destroyed with no human casualties, but Chen knew this was just the beginning. The scouts had been testing their defenses, learning about human capabilities. "They will adapt," she told Colonel Mitchell during the after-action briefing. "The next wave will be different." "Then we adapt faster," Mitchell replied. "That is what humans do." Dr. Park examined the wreckage of the Korthak ships. What she found confirmed her theories about their biology. The ships were indeed living creatures, but they were also machines. They had been designed and grown for specific purposes. "They are not naturally evolved," she reported. "Someone or something created them. This suggests there is a controlling intelligence behind the Korthak swarm." The implications were disturbing. If the Korthak were biological weapons, then somewhere in space was the civilization that had created them. That civilization might have other weapons, other swarms, other ways to destroy planets. But for now, the immediate threat was the main Korthak fleet approaching the Altarian worlds. The humans had proven they could fight the bioships, but the IB real test was coming. Soon, They would face hundreds of Korthak vessels in a battle that would determine the fate of the Altarian Federation. The Deathworlders had won their first victory, but the war was just beginning. The main Korthak fleet arrived 3 days after the scout engagement. Colonel Mitchell stood on the bridge of the UTS Defiance, watching the enemy ships emerge from hyperspace. The sight made even experienced human soldiers pause in shock. There were over 200 Korthak vessels of various sizes. The smallest were the size of frigates, while the largest were massive bioships that dwarfed human battlecruisers. They moved together like a living organism, their formations shifting and flowing in patterns that hurt to watch. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Chen. "There are so many of them." The bioships looked like a nightmare made real. Their hulls pulsed with veins that carried unknown fluids. Weapon ports opened and closed like breathing mouths. Strange appendages reached out from their surfaces, testing the space around them for threats. Captain Zara Veltan watched from the Altarian command ship, her face pale with terror. "How can we possibly fight so many?" "We use their numbers against them," Colonel Mitchell replied over the communication link. "Large formations are harder to coordinate. We hit them fast and hard before they can organize properly." Dr. Helen Park had been studying the captured Korthak technology for days. Her research had revealed something important about how the bioships communicated. "Colonel, they use biological signals to coordinate their attacks. If we can disrupt their communication, their formations will become confused." "What kind of disruption?" Mitchell asked. "Electromagnetic pulses might work, but I have a better idea. The Altarian medical scanners emit frequencies that interfere with biological processes. We could modify them to disrupt Korthak communications." The plan that emerged was typically human in its simplicity and violence. The joint fleet would split into small groups and attack the Korthak formation from multiple directions. The Altarian ships would use their modified medical scanners to jam enemy communications, while the human ships used their kinetic weapons to destroy the confused bioships. Sergeant Pete Rodriguez prepared his boarding teams for what might be the most dangerous mission of their lives. If the plan worked, they would need to capture a large Korthak vessel to study its internal structure and find weaknesses. "Remember," Rodriguez told his Marines, "these ships are alive. The walls might try to eat you. The floors might be toxic. Your environment suits are your best friends. Do not take them off for any reason." Corporal Amy Johnson set up sniper positions on asteroids throughout the battle zone. Her job was to disable specific Korthak ships at critical moments. Each shot would need to be perfect, hitting vital organs hidden deep inside the bioships. "I have studied their anatomy," Dr. Park told her. "Each ship has central nerve clusters that control basic functions. If you can hit these clusters, the ships will be paralyzed." The battle began when the Korthak fleet reached the edge of the Altarian home system. The bioships immediately spread out to surround the defending forces, exactly as Colonel Mitchell had predicted. Their formation was impressive but unwieldy. "All units execute Plan Alpha," Mitchell ordered. The human ships attacked from 5 different directions at once. Their kinetic weapons opened fire at maximum range, sending streams of solid projectiles into the Korthak formation. The bioships tried to adapt, growing thicker armor and regenerating damage, but the constant bombardment gave them no time to heal properly. At the same time, the Altarian ships activated their modified medical scanners. The biological communication signals between Korthak vessels became scrambled and chaotic. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began bumping into each other. "It is working," Captain Veltan reported with excitement. "Their formation is breaking apart." The largest Korthak bioship, a massive creature the size of a space station, tried to restore order to the fleet. It sent out powerful biological signals, attempting to regain control of the smaller vessels. This made it the perfect target for Amy Johnson. Johnson lay on her belly on a small asteroid, her sniper rifle aimed at the giant bioship. Through her scope, she could see the pulsing nerve clusters that Dr. Park had identified. The shot would be difficult even by her standards, but she had trained for impossible shots her entire life. "Target acquired," she reported. Taking the shot. The rifle fired with a sound like thunder. The bullet traveled across thousands of kilometers of space. Before striking the Korthak command ship, the projectile penetrated deep into the bioship's nervous system, severing connections that had controlled hundreds of smaller vessels. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The smaller Korthak ships began spinning out of control as their connection to the command vessel was cut. Some collided with each other while others simply drifted helplessly through space. "Now," Mitchell ordered. "All ships, full attack." The human fleet charged into the confused Korthak formation. Their ships were built for close combat, with thick armor and powerful weapons. They tore through the disorganized bioships like wolves, attacking a flock of sheep. Rodriguez and his boarding team used this chaos to approach one of the medium-sized Korthak vessels. Their assault shuttle was designed to punch through enemy hulls, and the bioship's organic armor could not stop it. "Breaching now," Rodriguez reported as his shuttle penetrated the Korthak ship's hull. The interior of the bioship was like stepping into the stomach of a giant monster. The walls were covered in a substance that looked like living muscle. Strange fluids dripped from the ceiling, and the air was filled with toxic gases that would have killed most species instantly. "Environment suits holding," reported Marine Corporal Dan Brooks. "This place smells like death." The boarding team moved through corridors that seemed to pulse with life. The floor beneath their feet felt soft and unstable, as if it might give way at any moment. Strange sounds echoed through the ship, like the heartbeat of an enormous creature. They encountered their first Korthak warriors in what appeared to be a central chamber. The aliens were insect-like creatures about the size of humans, but with 4 arms and natural weapons that could cut through metal. Their compound eyes reflected the light from the Marines' weapons like mirrors. "Contact front," Rodriguez shouted as the Korthak attacked. The fight was brutal and swift. The Korthak were fast and strong, but they had never faced opponents like human Marines. Rodriguez and his team had trained in environments that would kill most life forms. They were used to fighting in toxic atmospheres and unstable terrain. The human weapons proved devastatingly effective against the Korthak warriors. The aliens' natural armor could not stop bullets fired at close range. Within minutes, the chamber was filled with alien bodies. "Area secure," Rodriguez reported, proceeding to the next objective. Meanwhile, the space battle continued to rage around them. The human fleet was winning, but the cost was high. Several Altarian ships had been destroyed when their modified medical scanners failed. 2 human destroyers were badly damaged and limping away from the fight. Dr. Park monitored the battle from the science vessel UTS Discovery. Her instruments were recording everything about Korthak biology and technology. What she was learning would be crucial for future encounters. "Colonel," she reported, "I'm detecting something unusual. The bioships are not just weapons. They are also carrying something else." "What kind of something else?" Mitchell asked while directing the battle. "Genetic material from dozens of different species. I think the Korthak are not just destroying civilizations. They are collecting them." This revelation changed everything. The Korthak were not simple predators. They were gathering the biological heritage of every species they encountered. This suggested a purpose beyond mere destruction. Inside the captured bioship, Rodriguez made a discovery that confirmed Dr. Park's theory. In the deepest part of the vessel, his team found chambers filled with what looked like genetic storage devices. Each device contained samples from different alien species. "Colonel, you need to see this," Rodriguez reported. "These things are not just killing people. They are preserving them somehow." The implications were staggering. If the Korthak were collecting genetic material from destroyed civilizations, then somewhere in space was a vast library of alien life forms. But who was collecting this information? And why? The battle was turning in favor of the human-Altarian alliance. The Korthak fleet was in retreat, their formation broken, and their command ship disabled. But Colonel Mitchell knew this was not the end. It was just the beginning of a larger conflict. "All ships pursue and destroy," he ordered. "Do not let them escape to threaten other worlds." As the human ships chased the fleeing Korthak vessels, Dr. Park continued her analysis of the captured data. What she found would change humanity's understanding of the galaxy forever. The Korthak were not the ultimate enemy. They were weapons created by something far more dangerous. The Deathworlders had won a great victory, but they had also discovered that the real threat was still out there, waiting in the darkness between the stars. Dr. Helen Park's discovery changed everything about the war against the Korthak. The genetic storage devices recovered from the bioships contained DNA samples from over 50 different alien species. Some of the samples came from civilizations that had been destroyed centuries ago. Colonel Mitchell, Dr. Park reported from her laboratory aboard the UTS Discovery, the Korthak are not acting alone. These genetic collection systems are too sophisticated for a simple predator species. Someone is directing them. Colonel Mitchell studied the data on his command screen. The retreat of the Korthak fleet had been too organized, too planned. They had not fled in panic but had withdrawn according to some larger strategy. "Where did they go?" he asked Lieutenant Commander Chen. "Long-range sensors show them heading toward the edge of the galaxy," Chen replied. "They are moving toward an area that our star charts show as unexplored space." Captain Zara Veltan joined the discussion from her ship. The battle had changed her understanding of the universe in ways she was still struggling to accept. "We have old legends about that region of space. Our ancestors spoke of ancient civilizations that disappeared long ago." "What kind of civilizations?" Dr. Park asked. "The stories are unclear," Captain Veltan replied. "They mention beings of great power who ruled the galaxy millions of years ago. Most scientists dismiss the legends as primitive mythology." Sergeant Pete Rodriguez and his boarding team were still exploring the captured Korthak vessel. The bioship was slowly dying without its connection to the main fleet, but it continued to reveal secrets about its creators. "Colonel," Rodriguez reported, "we found something in the deepest part of this ship. It looks like a communication device, but it is unlike anything we have seen before." The device Rodriguez had found was a biological structure that pulsed with strange energy. Dr. Park's analysis revealed that it was designed to send messages across vast distances using quantum entanglement. The technology was far beyond anything humans or Altarians possessed. "This confirms it," Dr. Park said. "The Korthak are controlled by someone else, someone with technology that makes them extremely dangerous." As if summoned by their discovery, new contacts appeared on the long-range sensors. But these ships were different from the Korthak biovessels. They were made of metal and crystal, with designs that suggested incredible age and power. "Unknown vessels approaching," reported the sensor officer aboard the Defiance. "They are not using any propulsion system we can identify. They are just moving through space as if the laws of physics do not apply to them." Colonel Mitchell ordered the fleet to battle stations, but he suspected their weapons would be useless against technology this advanced. The three ships that approached were each the size of a small moon, and they radiated energy signatures that made human instruments go crazy. A communication signal reached the human and Altarian fleets. The voice that spoke was ancient and cold, like the sound of wind through empty tombs. "Primitive species," the voice said. "You have interfered with our harvest." This was not anticipated. "Who are you?" Colonel Mitchell demanded. "We are the architects. We seeded this galaxy with life billions of years ago. We return periodically to collect the results of our experiments. You have damaged our collection." Tools. The truth hit everyone at the same time. The Korthak were not invaders from another part of space. They were biological machines created by beings who considered all other life forms to be experimental subjects. "The civilizations you destroyed," Captain Veltan said, her voice filled with horror. "They were your experiments. All life in this galaxy is our creation," the architect replied. "We plant the seeds, guide evolution, and harvest the results. Your species were not supposed to develop the ability to resist our collectors." Dr. Park realized the full scope of what they were facing. "You have been doing this for millions of years. How many civilizations have you destroyed?" "Destroyed is the wrong word," the architect said with something that might have been amusement. "We preserve the genetic essence of each species. They continue to exist in our archives. As prisoners," Colonel Mitchell said flatly. "As data," the architect corrected. "Biological information to be studied and improved upon in future experiments." The largest of the three architect ships began to glow with energy that made space itself seem to bend around it. Whatever weapon it was charging would be powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. "You will surrender your genetic material," the architect commanded. "Resistance will only delay the inevitable." Colonel Mitchell looked at his tactical display. The human fleet had 20 ships against 3 vessels that seemed to ignore the basic rules of physics. By any reasonable calculation, they had no chance of winning. "All ships," he ordered, "prepare to attack." "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Chen said quietly, "our weapons may not be effective against their technology." "Maybe not," Mitchell replied, "but we are human. We do not surrender." The attack began with every human ship firing at once. Kinetic rounds, energy weapons, and nuclear missiles streaked toward the architect vessels. The weapons struck some kind of energy barrier that surrounded each ship, creating brilliant explosions that lit up space like new stars. When the light faded, the architect ships were undamaged. "Primitive weapons," the architect voice said with contempt. "Your resistance is meaningless." But something unexpected happened. Corporal Amy Johnson, still positioned on her asteroid, had been studying the architect ships through her sniper scope. She noticed that the energy barriers flickered for just a moment when they were struck by multiple weapons at exactly the same time. "Colonel," she reported, "their shields have a weakness. If we hit them with perfectly timed shots, the barriers go down for about half a second." "Half a second is not enough time to do significant damage," Dr. Park observed. "It is, if we use the right weapon," Colonel Mitchell said grimly. He was looking at the nuclear charges that Sergeant Rodriguez had prepared for boarding operations. "Rodriguez, how fast can you modify those charges for a ramming attack?" 5 minutes, sir," Rodriguez replied, understanding immediately what his commander was planning. The plan that emerged was insane even by human standards. They would use the damaged destroyer UTS Valor as a guided missile. The ship would accelerate toward the largest architect vessel, while the rest of the fleet created the precisely timed weapons barrage needed to drop its shields. Captain Frank Miller volunteered to pilot the Valor on its final mission. His ship was already badly damaged and would not survive another major battle. This way, his sacrifice might save both human and Altarian civilizations. "It has been an honor serving with you all," Captain Miller said, as his ship began its attack run. Coordination required for the attack was beyond the capabilities of most species. Every human ship had to fire at exactly the right moment, creating a pattern of impacts that would overwhelm the architect's shields for just long enough. Amy Johnson watched through her scope as the Valor accelerated toward the enemy vessel. The timing had to be perfect. Too early and the shields would be back up. Too late and Captain Miller would die for nothing. "Now," Colonel Mitchell ordered, every human weapon fired at once. The architect's shields flared and flickered under the perfectly coordinated assault. For exactly half a second, the largest enemy ship was vulnerable. The Valor, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed and loaded with enough nuclear explosives to destroy a city, struck the architect vessel exactly in that moment of vulnerability. The explosion was visible from several star systems away. When the light faded, the ancient vessel was gone, reduced to scattered debris that sparkled like stars. The remaining 2 architect ships immediately began to retreat. Their voices filled the communication channels with sounds of shock and disbelief. "Impossible," they transmitted. "No primitive species has ever destroyed one of our vessels." "Welcome to humanity," Colonel Mitchell replied. The architects vanished into hyperspace, but their final message was clear. They would return with a larger fleet. Humanity had won a battle, but the war was just beginning. 6 months later, the Altarian Federation and Earth signed the first Galactic Defense Treaty. Other civilizations, hearing about species that could fight the legendary architects, began reaching out to humanity for protection and alliance. Colonel Mitchell, now promoted to general, established the Galactic Defense Corps with headquarters on Altara Prime. The peaceful world had been transformed into a military training center, where species from across the galaxy learned to fight for their freedom. Dr. Park continued her research into architect technology, searching for weaknesses that could be exploited in future battles. The genetic samples they had recovered revealed that dozens of civilizations were still alive in architect databanks, waiting to be freed. Captain Veltan, now Admiral Veltan, commanded the joint fleet that patrolled the galactic frontier. She had learned to appreciate the necessity of violence when used to protect the innocent. Deep in space, monitoring stations built by human engineers watched for signs of architect return. When that day came, the galaxy would be ready. Earth's Deathworlders had answered the call for help and discovered they were not just protectors of humanity, but guardians of all free life in the galaxy. The real war was just beginning, but for the first time in millions of years, the galaxy had hope.